Call to order the West Basin Engineering Operations Committee meeting and special meeting of the Board of Directors. So we need a determination of quorum, Mr. General Manager.
Happy to do that. Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Director Don Deere. Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay. Any public comment this afternoon?
Mr. Chairman, we have not received a request for public comment, though I do know that this meeting is being held in person and virtually. If there's any member of the public that wishes to speak during public comment virtually, please let us know now by raising a virtual hand. And I do not see any requests for public comment.
Okay. And I don't believe there are any presentations today.
There are none.
So we will move on to the action calendar. First item up is award agreements for supply and delivery of bulk and mini bulk chemicals, which we have quite a few. So Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that item?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. As you mentioned, we have many items underneath item 5A, including A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. And I'm very pleased to announce that for this presentation, we have our newly promoted operations supervisor, Susanna Lee, here for the presentation.
Congratulations, Susanna.
Chairman Alvarez, and good afternoon, members of the committee. Please turn to page 4 of your packet, copy of the memo. As we mentioned that West Basin utilized many chemicals, various chemicals during a processing of the recycled water at all of treatment plants. And you're all aware that this fiscal year with chemical has been very challenging with all the price increase and short durations. So with all the chemicals, most of the chemicals agreements, their terms will be expired by the end of June of this year. So staff reach out to the chemical vendors to gauge the willingness to agree on pricing for a longer term contract. Most of the vendors do agree to guarantee a 6 months contract for this year at this time. As the market will stabilize going forward, we'll go back to the vendors and seek a longer term contract. As stated in the memo, the hydrated lime contract will be a little bit different and will be presented in a different staff report. So in summary, staff reach out and send out IFQs on March 22nd of this year, and we received bids on April 12th, 2023. The different chemicals we received between 2 to 4 chemicals, 2 to 3 quotes for each chemicals. And the submitted quotes are summarized in attachment A and B on page 8 and 9. That we evaluated the quotes for each chemicals and identified the lowest quotes for each of them. And all the recommended suppliers have been for the different chemicals. And as indicated in on table 1, all the price adjustments have been increased, relatively same as last fiscal year, with the 2 of the 3 chlor-alkali chemicals having the highest increase. That's sodium hypochlorite as well as sodium bisulfite. Rest of the chemical pricing had moderate increases, range between 1 to 9%, and with the exception of sulfuric acid that have the current unit prices as identified in table 1, and assuming no increase for the remaining 6 months, the current estimated chemical budget for fiscal year 23-24 is approximately $17.6 million. And these numbers have been included in the proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented to the board previously in the budget. That I will read the recommendations. That, staff recommends that the board authorize the acting general manager to award agreements with the following chemical suppliers from July 1st to 2023 to December 31st, 2023 for the supply and delivery of the following. A, carbon dioxide, California Tools and Welding Supply, to supply and deliver carbon dioxide to CNTP, TRWRP, and JMN CRWRP at 50 cents per pound. B, ferric chloride, Panko Inc. to supply and delivery ferric chloride to the ECL at $1,117 per dry ton. Hydrogen peroxide, Brentech Pacific Inc. to supply and deliver hydrogen peroxide to ECL at $3.89 per gallon. D, sodium bisulfite, JCI Jones Chemicals Inc. to supply and deliver sodium bisulfite at 0.008 per dry pound for CNTP, TRWRP, and JMN CRWRP. E, sodium hydroxide, JCI Jones Chemicals Inc. to supply and deliver sodium hydroxide to CNTP, TWRP, JMN CRWRP, ECL at $0.5401 per dry pound. Sodium hypochlorite, Olin chloralkali products to supply and deliver sodium hypochlorite to CNTP, TRWRP, JMN CRWRP, ECL at $1.998 per gallon. G, sulfuric acid, Brentech Pacific Inc. to supply and deliver sulfuric acid at $255 per ton for CCL, and $345 per ton for TRWRP. And H, Mini Bulk Chemicals, Miles Chemical Company for the supply and delivery of chemicals to ECL. Ferric chloride at $0.61 per pound. Sodium hydroxide at 38 cents per pound. And sodium hypochlorite at $3.759 per gallon. Be happy to answer any question.
Thank you very much. Director Wood.
I have a question for the acting general manager. Are you satisfied that these are fair prices?
I am. We've reviewed this board packet on a few occasions, and we've had the opportunity to have the executive manager of engineering operations review this with myself, as well as the manager of engineering, as well as our manager of operations. So we've thoroughly reviewed this, and I trust in their recommendations, and I would recommend approval of the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any questions? I have one question. Why so much more for delivery of the sulfuric acid at the Torrance Refinery versus the Dead Sea Little and the Juanita Millennium Donald plant?
Normally at that locations, the price is that much higher because of the much more smaller amount or quantity that's delivered to that.
Smaller quantity because we have a bypass. We have the original tank was off and we have a smaller tank.
Is the sulfuric acid project is operable at this point, so we start in using people.
Okay. And all of these are good through the end of the year, and then, so you'll be going through this process again in a few months.
Yes.
And at the beginning that it may be because I think things are getting more stable.
With the
That the
exception
next
of
time
the-
around, they'll do an annual quote as opposed to a 6-month quote, or,
With the exception of chlor-alkali, there are a couple of environmental regulations that might deter the vendor and suppliers to go into a longer term contract. So, but for the rest of the chemicals, we see that the pricing and the market is more stabilized. So we'll see.
thank you. To Director Gray, Director Williams, I apologize. Are you okay with moving this forward?
I am, and I would recommend that we do so.
Okay. We will move this to the board for their approval, for consideration, if you think. Next item up is the awarded of an agreement for the supply and delivery of hydrated lime. For Mr. General Manager, would you like to discuss that item?
Happy to do so, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, before we go any further, can we speak up a little louder? I'm having difficulty hearing everyone.
Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Yes, the next item that we have is item 5B. It is an award agreement for the supply and delivery of hydrate lime. For this presentation, we do have our manager of operations, Ms. Uzi Daniel, and this begins on packet page 10.
Afternoon, directors. You got a nice introduction to most of our chemicals from Susanna here, and we did separate out this memo, which actually will lend itself to one of the director's questions as well. So the supply and delivery of hydrated lime, like the other chemicals, is used as a part of daily operations. Many of the vendors, as we said, have preferred to have shorter term, and I'll preface that, or they'd like to have more flexible contracts. But they're not comfortable guaranteeing prices over 6 months for most of them. And as Susanna explained, that's changing somewhat. When we went out to bid for the chemicals, the hydrated lime, La Hoist, did submit a bid for 3 years. So they wanted to instead have us have a 3-year program, at which point we called when the bids we were allowed to ask if they would consider less time. And so through a discussion with them, they agreed to give us some options, and we might have them on the line here if there are any questions. And so what we outlined in this memo here are the different options in case the directors wanted to consider those, but I'll continue on with the memo and we'll go over that as we continue. And as the other contracts, these will expire on June 30th. And we're looking to renew the bids for all of our chemicals, lime included. And the lime is a very important part of, again, some of our pH adjustment required to meet some of the compliance as well as contractual limits for barrier. We need it for our solids processing and other light pH adjustment in all of our processes. And one thing to note on here is that we did decide, and we'll read the recommendation unless the board would like to consider something else. There's a nice table on page 11. We are going to be recommending the 1 year, and that 1 year recommendation is based on the fact we tried to look at CPIs. We'd love to have a crystal ball, but there is discussion of things stabilizing. There is discussion of, I mean, we've heard maybe there's a small recession. We've heard a number of things. So we thought that committing to a 2 or even 3 year contract might not be ideal, so that we could readjust, but a 1 year was great, in fact, more ideal. And I think that's what was alluded to, was going through this process more frequently costs everybody time and money. So we're trying to reach that perfect balance there. You can see as on packet page 11, our increase in cost in the hydrated lime over the last, since 2006, actually. We have some tables, table 1 to give us that historical perspective. And then in table 2, you can see the different proposed usage levels and the different terms on there. And based on that, I will read the recommendation and happy to answer any questions, as we've had quite a few discussions with our chemical vendors. And so the recommendation, which is listed on page 12, is that staff recommends that the board authorize the acting general manager to enter into an agreement with LaVoice North America for the supply and delivery of hydrated lime for 1 year term for the fiscal year 23-24 at $437.50 a ton. And again, happy to answer any questions.
Williams.
Again, to the general manager, acting general manager, so I guess you're only acting on this. Okay. If you're happy with this, that this is really fair price for us and you stand by it.
I do. Again, we've had plenty of opportunities to discuss these things. We all know that the pricing of these chemicals has fluctuated greatly, not in our favor at this time. But as Uzi mentioned, we are hoping that things stabilize, and I think that this is a good recommendation.
Thank you. That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any questions? I have a question. Option one was a 1-year contract at $437.50 a ton. Option two, same vendor, is a 2-year contract at $425 a ton for both years. So
Year 1 is 425 and year 2 is 452.
you transcribed that number. I apologize. I saw the 5-2 the other way around.
Yeah, no problem. I thought like, oh, I hope I didn't superimpose it, but yeah, so that's why I was saying we were kind of trying to balance, okay, 16%, how do we, so it's $452 dollars in the second term.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you. So, Director Williams,
Yes,
you okay with moving this one? forward?
absolutely. Let's do
All
it.
right. This one forward for the board's consideration. Next item is the procurement of microfiltration membranes for the Torrance Refinery Water Recycling Plant Boiler Feed System. So, Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you very much. For this item, again, we have our operations supervisor, Susanna Lee, here for the presentation. It does begin on packet page 13, and I might add that maybe at the conclusion of her report, our executive manager of engineering operations might have a quick update on our most recent meeting with the Torrance Refinery, but I'll hand it over to our operations supervisor now.
Thank you and good afternoon again, members of the board. As EJ mentioned, please turn to page 13 of the package for a copy of the memo. I'll begin with just as a reminder that as part of the boiler feed treatment train for PBF refinery, we have 6 microfiltration units at Torrance Refinery water recycling plant. And with an original design filtrate capacity of 3.73 million gallons per day. And as discussed in previous committee meeting and board meeting, these older polypropylene MF membranes, unlike the newer PVDF MF membranes at ECL, they do not handle as well with treatment of harsh chemicals. And so they're easier to prone for fouling. The current install MF at the plant is a little bit over 2 years old, and they were last installed later part of 2020. And as discussed in the memo, these membranes have been subject to the harsh water quality and operation conditions for the last year and a half since 2021. As the membrane conditions begin to deteriorate, staff requested the board for approval of purchase of 90 membranes back in September. As well as staff also was able to obtain additional 90 membranes at a heavily discounted price through an auction house. I was hoping with these membranes, we were able to help to improve the boiler feed water quality JMM and Torrance. These membranes have been installed between the two plants. The conditions and performance of the membrane systems have improved slightly, however, continue to perform poorly due to the water quality that was received from ECL during the first quarter of this year. And reasons for the continuations of the poor water quality from ECL is due in part of the challenging water quality you might have heard receiving from Hyperion throughout the January to March, because they're actively doing some rehab work on this. And but also due to some needed repairs for the aging equipment that were impacted by the 2021 water quality event, but also the performance have been impacted by a couple of delays in the CIP projects, including the solids handling system, as well as the project system. Back to the Torrance refinery plant, even with the installation of this membranes, as I mentioned, the MF system is still producing poor water quality, which also have a consequence of producing swelling of our membranes system. So this also forced the operations to reduce recoveries on our RO system that increase the amount of waste sending to the refinery, as well as requiring increase the use of potable water to help supplement and to meet demand. In a number of occasions, many of the units were needed to be pinned and cleaned, as well as RO membranes needed to be cleaned. West Basin had resort to use 100% potable water. As refining demands were not able to be met. Refinery representatives have reached out to staff a number of times, sending concerned emails and requesting a more reliable water supplies to be provided, as well as requests to increase RO recovery to help minimize waste disposal costs. Stated in the memo, refinery representatives have informed West Basin staff that additional boilers will be put online and will require a stable demand of at least 1,900 GPM by September of this year. Currently, with the condition of the membranes at this point, we will be able to only meet about 1,400 to 1,500 GPM with the addition of potable water, about 600 GPM. Summary, West Basin will not be able to provide the 1,900 GPM required flow by September without the replacement of membranes. In alignment with West Basin strategic goals, staff now and proactively solicit pricing information from DuPont, the tech representative back in March. Was prepared to seek court approval last month to hope to receive membranes by July and August this year and be ready for installation of membrane to prep for the September ramp up. DuPont provided a unit pricing of $920.33 per module. The lead time for the delivery of these membranes is currently at between 12 to 14 weeks, as they are being produced and manufactured in Australia. Total estimated cost is $644,796.52. For some comparison numbers, Veolia staff is currently cleaning these membranes every week and pinning as well. And that chemical cost alone is roughly about $100,000 each month. That doesn't include labor and resources used for pinning and cleaning of the MF membranes, as well as RO membranes. In addition, this fiscal year alone, FY 22-23, boiler feed production for PBF refinery is made up of 58% of potable water. Staff believe that procurement of these membranes is recommended for the following reason. Number one, it aligns with West Basin strategic goal number 1. With these new membranes, we will allow district to recover and to provide water reliability for Torrance boiler operations, and position West Basin to handle the ramp up in September. Number two, it aligns with West Basin's strategic goal number 2 to provide high water quality requirement per our contract with PBF. Number 3, it aligns with West Basin's strategic goal number 3 as good partner and to provide good customer service to PBF to allow the continuation of recycled water. So MS system and performance to continue to deteriorate, as mentioned earlier. West Basin would need to stop providing recycled water because the MS system will not be able to handle the 1900 GPM of demand. This will significantly impact to West Basin revenue in the new fiscal year. Number 4, it aligns with West Basin's strategic goal number 4, as West Basin is continuing to commit to efficient business operations and financial planning. By purchasing these membranes, it will ensure that West Basin will minimize the chemical usage and it will help us to maximize production, recycled water production. Furthermore, staff heard the board's desire and positions to continue to strong conservation message from last board meeting. It will be sending good message to public that West Basin is doing everything we can to minimize potable water usage in our recycling operations. For board to consider is that staff have received the email from DuPont that they're willing to waive the $22,000 shipping fee should we order this membrane by the end of June. With that, I'll read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board authorize the acting general manager to procure 600 microfiltration submodules from DuPont Fintech Corporation for an amount not to exceed $644,796.52, including shipping and sales tax. Then I'll be happy to answer a question. Provide update on the discussion.
Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, board members. Board members, this item did come up in a meeting on Monday with the refinery. There was a meeting of the team that is discussing, that are having contract negotiations. And there is, and there could be some refinery members joining the meeting today, or either today or the board meeting coming up. There is an understanding by the refinery that of the criticality of these MF membranes, and we have requested them to look into reimbursing us for this capital expenditure. And the refinery, we sent the information to the refinery, how many membranes were, what is the cost, the unit cost, the overall cost, and all that type of information. And they're running it through their management to see if we can get a quick commitment from them to reimburse the costs. So I just wanted to let you, the board, know that those discussions have occurred, and we're optimistic about being reimbursed from the refinery for these costs.
Thank you very much. Director Williams, any questions?
Yeah, it's just a curious question. Do we ever get any feedback from Veolia on what we could be doing to improve our operation? Since they're there, they are there, they are it for us. What do they have to offer?
Dr. Williams, we work hand in hand with Veolia to come up with solutions with some of the challenges that we are receiving. Veolia have, this subject alone, Veolia has prepared several memos in the past, I would say, year, in talking about action plans, solutions, temporary solutions, and ultimate fixes. And we've evaluated those different aids. Susanna mentioned about the cleaning that we're doing as a temporary measure, as a way to kind of see if we can go through a little bit longer period of time. But yeah, all these solutions the decision to order new membranes is one that Veolia, the operations team, and the engineering team are all aligned on. That this is necessary in order for us not to, get more potable water as supplement, and in order to meet the refinery's demands with the new boiler coming online in the fall. Yes, Veolia and West Basin work together to come up with solutions on this. And they give us plenty of feedback.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it.
Do you have any questions? Okay. These membranes are being manufactured in Australia, I think was are there any membranes manufactured in the United States?
Not for this particular system, and that's one of the reasons why we went to the CM at JMM, because they're the same system. So this is proprietary, and only DuPont Vimtech is the only supplier for this particular one.
So basically, as long as we keep the existing configuration, we're stuck with DuPont.
It's worth mentioning that, this started a few years ago, and the discussions are continuing about potentially, replacing the existing system at Torrance. We've also talked about a solution of relocating a portable MF system that we have at JMM to their facility to make up for some of the water. Those are some of the solutions that we are talking to them about. They cost more, and so we would need more reimbursement from them to implement those, but they're on the table.
Thank you. Well, with that, I don't have any further questions. So you okay with moving this forward?
Yes, absolutely.
For the board for their consideration. Next up is the information calendar, and the first item is the monthly engineering report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, we are now in the information portion of our calendar. We do have 4 items for you. It's worth noting that I have been working with the chairman for kind of a reconfiguration of some of the monthly reports, and I've pledged to you that I'll continue to do that along with our executive manager of engineering operations and the managers of both engineering and operations. So the first item that we have for you is item 6A, and it's our monthly engineering report. And our manager of engineering, Mr. Wendell Johnson, will begin this presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Please turn to page 19 in your packet, and I will quickly give you a summary of the monthly engineering report. I have various members of my staff to give you detailed information on some specific projects or to join me in the update. As you're aware, if you look in your agenda, we will be giving a individual staff report on the recycled water fill station, CIP number 10119. And we also will be giving a presentation on the recycled water distribution system product protection system improvement project close out. And if we could turn to pages 23, 24, and 25 of the presentation.
Oh, see anything. Interesting. Okay, hold on. Okay, which request is that?
Hold on. Keep going.
Pages 23, 24, and 25 are the budget summaries of the projects that are in FY 22-23 CIP budget. We provide you with this information on a monthly basis. We can move to page 26. Currently, we have several solicitations that are out. We are in the process of reviewing RFPs that have been received for the solids handling improvement project. We are using our on-call services contract for RFPs for the bulk chemical storage at Chevron. And we are also using that for the Torrance bulk chemical storage improvement. We have a project that is in the South Bay for the expansion of the 405 auxiliary lane projects. We will also be using our on-call services contract to solicit engineering services for that project also. If we move on to page 27.
Yes.
This month, we will be meeting with the general manager and we will be reviewing one of the state gate processes for the distributed control replacement project, which is in this year's budget, FY 22-23 for $878,000. And I would first like to introduce Veronica, and she's going to give you an update on the Palos Verdes Recycle Water Pipeline Project.
Thank you, Wendell. And the exhibit for the City Palos Verdes Days update, it's on page 29 of your package. And I'm happy to report that the staff went to the City Council meeting to a presentation to let the City Council members as well as the audience to know that here we are coming with the construction in the coming weeks. Essentially, what you see on this particular PowerPoint or slide, it shows the subjects that we touched during that presentation. And that presentation included a little bit of the what West Basin does, as well as our service area. And then we went over a project overview to let them know about the pipeline, which was the update on the construction, the upcoming construction project, as well as a little bit of information about the pump station. We also touched bases in regards to the project support that we have obtained through this entire, process for this particular project, as well as the funding mechanisms that we have for the project. The city was mostly interested on the alignment that we were going to be following in the City of Palos Verdes State. So we did had a Zoom image to show basically the alignment that we were going to be traveling through. And then we also had a brief description of a public outreach program. Essentially, our consultant, Tricia Murakawa Communications, was present at the meeting, and she debriefed the City Council members in regards to the approach, the goals, as well as the objectives of how as we implement the project. And then basically that was pretty much the end of that presentation. The United City Council members was very accepting of the project. And then we also gave them an update on the next steps on the next slide, which is just a brief description of the schedule. We informed them that the pipeline was awarded in March 2023 of this year. And our expectation for the pipeline completion is early next year. In the pump station, we also debriefed them on the status of it, and so our expectations are to this summer to obtain the construction award and have a completion by May, spring of next year. With that, I'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you. Director
No,
Williams?
thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any questions?
There are other highlighted projects after this one too.
Oh, I thought,
There's a couple more. One, phase 2 expansion project that Kevin will talk a little bit about. And
then we can come back to questions.
Kevin, go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the committee. I'll be providing a brief update on our Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant Phase 2 expansion. Next slide, please. Just a few progress photos that we've taken over the past month. We made a considerable amount of progress on the new access road that extends to the back half of the plant. So we poured new curb and gutter, which you can see on the left-hand photo there. And then we also installed some of the final bits of mechanical piping at the CEMF, which are the backwash and feed piping. Next slide, please. Another notable accomplishment was the installation of a new isolation valve on our 42-inch pipeline. This was a great effort coordinated between the whole project team, the contractor, the construction manager, Veolia, our contract operator, and also Infomark, our distribution operator, to help isolate a valve upstream. So we completed the installation without any hiccups. Next slide, please. Here's some more photos of the access road and the first course of asphalt being placed. Next slide, please. We've also made a considerable amount of headway on the remaining conduit installation in the electrical buildings and have begun to pull power cables and other type of instrumentation wiring throughout the site. But in this photo on the right, you can see the power cabling being pulled for our VFDs in electrical building 99. I guess other worthwhile we've accomplished in the past couple of weeks. We had a successful factory acceptance test of our ACP 99. We've also been preparing for our upcoming final shutdowns. Those are the final pipeline tie-ins and our electrical service upgrade, and then also have begun excavating for our detention base. This slide, I'll just highlight where some of the things stand today. So in terms of schedule, we had a contractual completion date for the project of April 27th. So the schedule has elapsed. We have today we'll be processing a 33-day time extension to the end of May. We have a meeting tomorrow with the contractor to talk over how some of the future time extensions will play out. So that'll be an ongoing discussion. In terms of costs, the base construction contract is at $21 million. To date, the contractor has earned about 77% of that based on their progress to date. In terms of RFIs, we've processed 271 of the 281 received, and on submittals, 318 have been processed of the 330 received. Next slide, please. Just a highlight on the status of the PLA. For our approved local percentage, we are sitting at 35%, which is above our tier 1 goal. We continue to remind the contractor to check in with all the unions and make sure that they are getting all the available local hires that are out there. On the at-risk side, we're well above the 5% goal at 7.6%. And for apprentices on the site of the man hours that are being provided, 22.7% are being provided by apprentices. So good numbers there. Next slide, please. I did want to highlight.
Just a quick note on that. There was a request on that, there was a request by the chairman, I think in a past meeting, about us looking into the PLA and comparing it to other PLAs. We're looking at bringing an informational item on that in June to talk more about it.
Mr. Chair,
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Gray, go ahead.
could I ask a question now regarding the local hiring component?
I'm sorry.
My question, can you hear me? Yes. Regarding the local hiring goals that were mentioned, do we have information to show the zip codes where those local hires are coming from?
Yes, we do. We receive a monthly report from our PLA consultant, and I'm happy to provide those numbers.
Did
Yeah,
you
I'd
hear
like
that,
to
Director
know-
Gray?
Yes, and I'd like to know what part of my district, what zip codes for my district that we have local hires. I'd like to know that, if staff can provide that to me. And
No
how
problem,
many,
Director.
and how many for my district? And specifically, what positions? Thank you.
We'll definitely provide that information.
If you do it for one, you just do it for all.
All the divisions, yep.
Yep, we have a nice summary sheet I can share. I did want to highlight enhancement opportunity. I've worked with our ocean friendly garden program, and there's been a very high level conceptual design of an ocean friendly garden that could be implemented in the front of JMM. So I wanted to highlight that as a potential enhancement opportunity. If it was of the interest of the directors, I could look further into pricing and see what it might take to have an ocean friendly garden out of the plant. Additionally, I wanted to again offer to host any tours, both for staff and for any directors interested to get out there and see the project. I'm happy to host that. Please. This is just that high level conceptual design that I mentioned. A lot of opportunity in the front to clean up the plant and enhance the front.
On that, Kevin, we welcome any feedback from directors, whether you think this is a good opportunity to do something like this or perhaps to do something like this in the future. So maybe towards the end of the presentation, we can.
Next slide, please. That concludes my update. I'll turn it over to John.
John Benner is here to give us an update on the solids handling improvement project, the filter cloth replacement.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, directors. Got here on package page 41, a update on recently completed filter cloth replacement under the Solids Handling Improvements Project, CIP number 10059. As you'll remember, we received board approval in November last year to procure 280 high quality filter cloths to replace the old varieties fitted to our solids handling. Increase the output density and therefore save the district around $70,000 per month in haulage fees. We came back to the board in February for the contract to install the cloths, and we began installing the filter cloths when they arrived in early April. Report that the project was completed within schedule on May 10th, with all contracts remaining within their approved budgets. I have here some progress images from the month-long effort. So on the left here, you can see the previous filter cloths. Some of them have been on the presses for many years, and they were significantly reducing our efficiency, which in turn increased our haulage costs. The middle image here shows the progress halfway through the replacement on one of the filters. You can clearly see the difference between the old and the new cloths there. And then the final image there shows some contractors fitting one of the cloths. It's difficult to see on this image, but the red part there in the center between the two cloth pieces is the actual plate itself. So you have the contractors strip the old cloths, pressure wash and clean the plates, and then install the new cloths. One thing we did notice when we were taking off the old cloths and pressure washing it is that the coating on the plates is starting to peel. So that's something we're going to be looking at replacing and refurbishing in the upcoming project. Next slide. So here you can see some before and after photos showing the difference in just 1 month. Obviously, over time, the new cloths will become soiled and begin to resemble the old versions. But the key difference here is the difference in quality of the new cloths compared to the old versions. They're made of a much higher quality material. It's far less prone to blockages and ruptures. And so it means that not only are we able to squeeze more water out of the solid cake, so reducing our haulage costs, but it means that our operators should need to spend far less time replacing the torn and damaged cloths throughout the year. So it should improve operator time as well. Next slide, please. That gives a brief overview of this mini project and its benefits. As previously mentioned, we replaced all the cloths on time and in budget. In the last 2 weeks since the first press was completed, we've experienced a noticeable density increase of approximately 5% on average. This corresponds to roughly $30,000 saved in haulage in just those 2 weeks. Now that both presses are refitted, we can expect to see that average steadily increase up to 10%, which with our new haulage contract would result in anticipated savings of about $200,000 per month. This small project cost $175,000, and so we can expect to see this project pay for itself by around August. Just a reminder at the bottom there, until we proceed with the full press refurbishment project, we will need to replace a significant number of these cloths every year. We can expect that replacement percentage to be around 30% in the first year at a rough cost of around $50,000. And that percentage will likely increase in subsequent years as the presses continue to deteriorate. Next slide. Two videos of the presses in operation before and after the replacement. The presses are closed on the left. Are we able to play the videos? Yes, the video on the left. The presses are closed before this operation and squeezes as much of the water out. As you can see here, as the plates open up, you can see the cake dropping down into the waiting truck to be hauled away for reuse. What's important here is looking at the fragmentation of the cake itself. Its lack of consistency and falling apart, that shows the lack of density there. And also, it's difficult to see on this screen, but there's a large amount of cake left on the plates themselves after this operation. So the operators then need to spend time scraping down the plates and cleaning them, which takes considerable. In the video taken recently on the right there, the important thing to notice here is as the load is dropped, it's going too quickly to see, but as the load is dropped, you can see a complete cake dropping out in the form of the presses. So that shows a much higher density, much higher efficiency, which means we're hauling away less water every month, and that's where the savings come from. An important thing to notice here as well is the cleanliness of the plates after the pressing. There's very little cake left behind the plates, but pretty much none, which saves operators time and makes it a nicer job for them as well after each operation. That concludes the presentation on this completed small project. We'll be bringing back the solids handling project soon for a proposed contract award on the design of the larger refurbishment. But for now, I'm happy to take any questions on the cost replacement.
If I may add, also, we are working on putting together for the engineering update report some additional information regarding the contracts that we have with contractors, vendors, consultants, and we're looking to post that information as well moving forward in upcoming.
Are we done now?
Any questions for any of the team members?
All right, so Director Williams, you have any questions?
No, not on this. No, thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any additional questions? I got a couple of questions. On the I-405 Auxiliary Lane project, what is that?
There's an expansion where they're building throughout the South Bay. They're building an auxiliary lane or a backup lane next to the 405. And what we have within their right of way, we have a 42-inch recycled water line. And in order for them to build their foundation, it's going to be encroaching on the location of the water line. And what has been proposed to them initially, they wanted us to relocate the line, which would have been a cost of over $1 million to the district. And what we working with Caltrans and working with Metro, we determined that by changing the foundation type, they would be able to get closer to our existing pipe. And what we have to do in order for them to encroach on the distance to that pipe is to do an encasement of the existing pipe. And so what we're going out for is an RFP to get a contractor a consultant on board to take a look at what is the effort and to build plans and go through the approval process for an encasement of that water line, so we don't have to relocate it because of the interference with the foundation footing.
So our pipeline, is this the project that's taking place right now on the 405 between Artesia and the 110 interchange?
Yes.
Okay, so our 42-inch pipeline, is that in the Caltrans right away?
Yes. Yes, we have an easement.
So we have an easement from Caltrans, and the easement, what are the conditions of the easement?
The easement condition is that if required, we have to relocate the pipeline. It's not an easement, which is a title of land. but it's a utility easement for the purpose of the pipeline, and we are to maintain, and if required, we have to perform on our own resources to relocate the pipeline if they ask us to.
Is it more of an easement or is it more of, there is a Caltrans easement and there's some allowances for utilities to be in that? Orlando, can you clarify a little
Yeah,
bit further?
clarify a little bit more. This is Caltrans right away. The utility was put in place through an encroachment permit, so there is no easement in place. So we don't have superior rights here. So in that sense, we're in there right away and they're undertaking this project, expanding the I-405 auxiliary lanes and their proposed piles are essentially encroaching in their, it's a zone of influence on our utility line. So they then asked us, because we're at about 5 feet of distance, to protect that line because they consider it a high priority line. It's a water, recycled water. So obviously they're scared of any kind of undermining if there's a leak or anything to those foundations. So they're asking us to then encase it at 2 locations, specifically on the on Marine Avenue on the north end and the south end, where they're proposing those new basically columns piers. So 15 feet in each direction of those 2 locations.
So a couple of questions. Going back to my earlier question, if we're there by easement or what? So we're there under an encroachment permit.
Correct.
The encroachment permit is within the Caltrans right of way granted by Caltrans to us to build a pipe, construct the pipeline.
Yes.
So their conditions is if they ever need that right of way back, the burden's on us to accommodate them. to get that.
Correct.
So we're not talking about that, that construction is about a mile long right now, or a little bit longer than that, actually. We're only talking about a very limited area that is in.
Yes, on Marine Avenue. So just underneath the 405 at that location.
How many 100 feet are we talking about?
Not even 100 feet. There, we're supposed to encase about 60 feet. So basically 30 feet on one location in both directions of the proposed column, and then 30 feet in the other location at the other side.
So they're just asking us for encasement.
Yeah, so they want us to go in there before they actually go in there, their contractor, to make sure that our encasement is in place prior to them doing any kind of excavation, augering or whatnot.
I think that answers my other question. They're expecting us to do the encasement first at our expense with our own contractor. Not that we can just have their contractor do that work.
We did ask for that, but because of liability purposes, they wouldn't include that portion of the work for our utility line into their contract, so they're asking us.
Even if we waive their,
Yeah, we've talked to Caltrans and Metro. It's not just us, there's other utility impacts also for other utility owners, so we're just one of the many. There's several locations, it just happens to be the West Basin, like a water location where it impacts us.
okay, so we're looking to right now bring in a consultant to basically evaluate and make a proposal on encasement for the pipeline.
We'll design the encasement itself for that 42-inch line. So then once we have that design, then we'll go out to solicitation for bids to actually perform the work. We've reached out to an interesting location. It's like the city boundary for about 3 different cities, Lawndale, Redondo Beach, and Hawthorne, that will be impacted simply by the traffic control. So we've already reached out to them along with obviously Caltrans, because we would have to pull a Caltrans permit as well to do this work. I believe this is a Caltrans project, so we're hoping that obviously they will be helping us in this and getting us the, hopefully expediting the approval process for us to go out there and do the work.
Good luck on that.
I know.
All right. Thank you. When you got the McDonald's plant project, so we're gonna give them a time extension now. This is a second time extension. Or this is the first? To May.
Till May 30th.
May is basically done in another couple of weeks. And they're not gonna be done. So what is the real estimated completion date?
Estimated completion date, I do not have the April update yet, but as of March 30th, it was August 31st. That's what we're targeting. The commissioning process is fluid, but we're targeting water deliveries through the CMF in July with final completion at the end of August.
And are all these, I guess my question is it really all legitimate delays that they should get time extension for? And if so, what are the delays that we have caused?
The delays that have impacted the project schedule to date, the front end has been mainly procurement. The schedule from the onset was fairly aggressive, given the amount of work we were doing, so we had a lot of impacts on plastics. There was individual components of the CMF, PLCs were delayed, a lot of miscellaneous electrical components. So procurement was one, and then now what's driving the schedule is the commissioning process. That's fallen on the critical path. So pulling wire, doing the loop checks, and then getting through commissioning and a successful acceptance testing.
We've now, with the time extension that we're giving them, we're accommodating them for the delays due to the purchasing delays, acquisition of equipment, et cetera. So the additional delays are on pulling wires, is what you were saying? Or?
The procurement delays had when we evaluate them, had to evaluate them at the time we received a time impact analysis showing how it impacted the schedule, and that was out through June 30th. So in part of our discussion we'll be having tomorrow with the contractor, we'll expand upon this, but because we had reached the final completion date, what we could agree to at the time with the contractor was a non-compensable time extension through May 30th. And then we had committed to meeting with them to discuss future time extension.
Oh, but the time extension that we're gonna do is basically for the purchases. The procurement, with plastics or whatever you were mentioning that caused some delays at the beginning. And you estimate that will get us through, that time extension legitimately would then be through the end of June?
When the impacts were,
just the procurement delays.
yeah, when we had evaluated that time impact analysis, I think that was 8 months ago, that had the schedule pushed out to at least June 30th. So since then, there has been additional delays for a number of reasons, and we're evaluating the responsibility of those.
Director, we're in negotiation now. I mean, Kevin mentioned the meeting coming up tomorrow, but there has been other meetings recently and discussions. We're in negotiation about all of this right now with them, about the delays, what do they mean, which delays had a bigger impact on the project than the other ones. In addition to what Kevin mentioned, there's some delays related to, rain days, right? There's weather-related delays. And so we were in, I saw the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. There's a lot of details that we're going to have to go through with the contractor to address what are legitimate, what are non-legitimate delays.
But right now, we agree that we're responsible for the procurement delays.
We're in deep
Well, you've
discussions.
given them an extension to kind of carry them over through the end of May. And you're mentioning that we think that the end of June would be appropriate extension for the procurement delay, for the purchasing of whatever was delayed at the beginning. Because
Ultimately, combined delay is going to take the project up to the end of August, like Kevin mentioned. I think we're giving them a month right now to allow us time to negotiate and keep the cash flow going, and the invoices running, and give us some time to negotiate properly what are the appropriate delays and what is compensable, what is not compensable.
my question, what do we think we're responsible for? We're responsible for procurement delays. Beyond procurement delays, we're gonna be, accept that weather delays are realistic and they should be allowed some additional time. So we agree on weather days and we agree that procurement was our responsibility. Beyond that, what is our responsibility?
I take as project manager, I do not believe the procurement delays are our responsibility. I think we have some responsibility to share with the contractor on the weather delays. And I think there's discussions to be had about the other delays.
Thank you. Because I kind of should have said, why would we be responsible for procurement delays? But, okay. We are gonna have to, and I think we've already extended the contract with the construction management firm. So that's an additional expense incurred by the district to accommodate the delays on the project. So to the extent that we have liquidated damages, we should not be willing to give up anything that's beyond what we are responsible for. If we should be seeking to seek compensation for the additional expense that we have to incur as a result of the delay on the project. The other question I had was just out of curiosity, because the pictures went up real quick and on the curb and gutter, how long did that take from start to finish?
To be honest, they're really quick. It was impressive to watch. I would say within a week, they had it all formed up and poured.
And then you showed one picture that actually had it, you're starting the pavement, so it's all paved already and.
Yeah, so we placed the first course of pavement. They've left the last 2 inches so that we can continue to drive equipment on it. And then they'll have one final coat at the end that'll tidy up the site.
Thank you. Then I do have question on the ocean-friendly garden portion that you had suggested. Is the ocean-friendly garden also a drought-tolerant garden? Yeah, and what is in that parkway now?
Currently it's hedges. I think there's a pine tree, mostly dirt, ground covering, gravel.
So it's not landscaped.
Not the prettiest, but it is some landscaping.
This tree. Because the illustration that you put up is an attractive feature to put in front of the plant. It's a very industrial area. I don't know how much, how long that will last if you build something like that. But if there are trees there now, are the trees going to be saved and incorporated in the ocean-friendly garden, or is?
My first intuition is yes. I think when I worked with Jennifer Vasquez on it, we had tried to take the most cost-effective approach. So it was not anything major, not removing anything major. A lot of the ground covering mainly. We could take another look at that.
Then you said there would be a cost associated with it. What are we looking at?
Honestly,
Have an idea yet?
we have not gauged landscapers for installation costs, but I wanted to, I guess, gauge the interest of the board and then see if we should move forward with soliciting quotes.
Director Williams, what's your interest in that?
Well, I think every opportunity that we get to put forward ocean-friendly garden or any drought-tolerant material, we ought to do it.
Do we currently water the parkway at all?
It does have sprinklers, and I do know that Schweizer, our landscaper, comes by and cleans up the area. mainly just droppings and ground covering stuff.
I personally like the illustration that you put up. I'd like to save the trees, but I like to save trees in general. And my concern is that given the area that it's being installed in, how long will it last? Because it's a very industrial area.
But I think nevertheless, we should try to reestablish it so that folks would take an interest in it. We do that ourselves, don't we?
Yes.
So we should keep that up.
I can add, the property, our neighbors to the north, Shell, their terminal facility does have a similar entrance that has some drought tolerant landscape.
Yeah.
All right, well, let us know how much it's gonna cost. Okay.
It won't be much.
Is that?
It won't be much.
It should be more than $5.
How much would it take to remove this fan right here?
More than
This supply fan. It's a lot of competition for your reports. You hear it? I can.
Okay, that is it for my questions. You don't have any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any other questions? With that, are you okay with moving this forward for the board's consideration?
Yes.
Okay, do that. The next information calendar item is the operations report.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This item will be presented by, again, a team of people, including our manager of operation, Uzi Daniel.
Thank you again. For the monthly operations report, just a reminder, usually when we do these, it's kind of just some general information of a look back, but we can give you more current information as well. And some of the highlights that we include in here are about barrier production. Last month, they were a little bit lower at 4 to 5 million, but we're just about 8 to 9 MGD right now for the barrier. You heard today, Torrance, we had some low production, but a lot of that was based on our membrane issues, which sounds like today we're making steps towards hopefully trying to change that. There's also going to be a big event on Saturday. We're going to have to do a shutdown at Torrance. We're coordinating. It's kind of a nice effort between engineering, the distribution team, Veolia, and that's to replace some parts in a clay valve there. And we did last month, we had a couple of complaints on odor. So the distribution team went through and made sure we do spot chlorination. We don't have a lot of, especially when we get up towards some of the sports stadiums, we don't have a lot of chlorine booster pump stations. So we just have to do it manually, and usually with good success. There is, at SoFi, they're managing it a lot themselves, but after they take a lot of stormwater infiltration. So in general, as people start watering again, we are seeing, we saw some odor complaints, but those seem to be remedied. There's also going to be, we're coordinating another larger repair. Again, the big heavy rain season. So now as people turn back on their recycled water and their irrigation, we're finding where there's some leaks or maybe they weren't noticed before. And distribution teams handling that. And then just to round it off with compliance, we last month did a pre-inspection. We got a notification from the regional board. This week, they actually came out, 2 different groups. We have to reapply every 5 years for the brine permits. So they have their we'll call it their brine permit writers coming out, and they accompany them with the enforcement team as well as the stormwater team. And that was about a 6-hour journey. All went well, but a lot of follow-up questions. And if there's anything of concern, we'll bring that to the board in our next report. That is the highlighted portion. We have some attachments If you have specific questions or you'd like us to go into the attachments as a presentation, I, a pleasure of the board.
If, okay, unless there's something pressing, just time wise, and earlier we talked about that there's an event over at Sea Little at 6 PM. It's already 5:15. So if there's nothing pressing, I think we can then move on to the next information item, which is the Cathodic Protection System Improvement Project, closeout report.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For this presentation, we have Kevin Cullen, our engineer 3, who's serving as the project manager.
We do have some slides starting on packet page 66, 68 actually. So I'll be providing a completion report on our recently completed recycled water distribution system cathodic protection project. Slide, please. Just in general, the overall goal of this project was to both update, I should say repair, rehabilitate the existing cathodic protection systems and install new systems where needed. So it was a pretty comprehensive project that involved work in all 5 divisions on 23 of the 42 pipelines in the distribution system. We have about 234,000 linear feet of metallic pipe. That's about 44 miles. So about every 1,000 feet, there is one of these CP systems. Next slide, please. As an overview of the project scope, in total, we did work at 269 individual sites. There were 128 new CP test stations installed. As part of a cathodic protection system, it's critical that we have electrical continuity across pipeline joints, valves, and other appurtenances, so that the cathodic protection can carry across those 1,000-foot spans. So we pinpointed 36 areas that needed repairs, and those repairs were made. We also installed 241 new vertical anode beds. So each new CP test station had its own anode bed. The remainder of those were new anode beds at existing CP test stations. And in total, there was 1,571 magnesium anodes that were installed. Most locations had either 4 or 8 anodes, and it came out to a total of almost 38 tons of magnesium that we buried in the ground. So of importance there is that the anodes will rust in the future rather than the pipeline itself. Next slide, please. Looking back at the schedule and budget, we issued notice to proceed on February 22nd of 2021 with an aggressive 365-day contract, so of exactly 1 year. In total, it took us 729 days. Obviously, that's a pretty large delay to the schedule. A lot of that came from permit delays from individual cities. We also had some procurement issues procuring all of those anodes, as well as it took a good amount of time to get the activation reports in a suitable format to the project team. So we worked with the contractor and their sub-consultant who produced those reports in a lot of detail at the end there. In terms of the project budget, we did excellent. While we had an overrun with the schedule, we were able to keep costs at a minimum with the project team, that being our design engineer and construction management firm. And then we were also able to come in actually under the base construction award on the contractor side. Mainly we did have to skip over a few test stations due to pavement moratoriums. But overall, even considering those, there was very minimal contingency used. Next slide, please. Here's a summary of the change orders were processed over the duration of the project. Change order 1 had some money that was mainly for some anode beds that had to be installed horizontally near the boring company's tunnels in Hawthorne. Change order 4 had to do with installing some new CP test stations where structure wires were bad. Change order 5 had a credit there was a number of those discontinuous joints that were quantified at bid time. And when we repaired some of the discontinuities, others resolved themselves. So some work was not required to be done, and we got a credit there. And then change order 6 had a few items in it, but mainly the big credit came from the deletion of a few test stations that I'll highlight in the next slide. Here's one of the locations where we did get a credit from the contractor for work not performed. We ran into a pavement moratorium out on Prairie Avenue in front of the Inglewood Stadium. At the time of the project, there was a lot of work ongoing out there, and the city had just recently repaved Prairie. So the circles there identified new test stations that required excavations out in the street to connect to the pipeline. The other test stations there were just work behind the curb. So unfortunately, we weren't able to move forward with the ones in red, but we have the design plans ready to go. We have the specs ready to go, and when the moratorium's up in 2027, we can circle back and take care of them. Next slide, please. Kind of the same instance here. We ran into a pavement moratorium on Wilmington Avenue down near the Marathon Refinery, and we also got a credit for these 3 test stations not performed, and has the same timeline on the pavement moratorium. Next slide, please. Looking forward, currently working to turn over all the documentation to the operations department, working closely with Frankie Chandler in the operations department. So we'll be turning over the record drawings, an O&M manual, other miscellaneous project files, and then we'll also be integrating all the new CP test station locations into our GIS system. And then hopefully working with operations to help create a program database where we can continue to test these test stations on either an annual or biannual basis and track the remaining anode life to see where we have any corrosion hotspots or where future repairs may be needed. And then we'll circle back in 2027 to take care of those remaining test stations. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Director Williams, any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any questions? I have a question. The 364 days of delays on this project, and you showed us all the change orders. We're responsible for 364 days of delays.
I wouldn't say that we are responsible, but the project was impacted by some things that weren't able to be controlled by the contractor. So we negotiated non-compensable time extension, so just time only. And then our owners team, the design engineering services during construction, the CM team was able to back off and stretch their budget as best they could.
And the savings that you mentioned, and there's the 2 change orders in the construction contract. They're primarily for deleted work items.
Yeah, the majority of those credits are for deleted work items.
So at the end, I think you said you were going to come back and actually put that in.
That is the plan. I think
Additional stations.
Yeah.
So that savings really is going to be reused, and it may cost us more money.
savings for now, dollars to be spent in the future.
Really a savings, it was a deletion of the word. And the last information item is the recycled water fill station.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman. This item begins on packet page 78, and the presentation will be given by Camille Castillo, our engineer too.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the committee. I want to take you to packet page 93 and provide you updates on the fill station projects. So in the past month and a half, we made some headway. We are able to receive the revised draft supplemental engineering report from our consultants, Woodard and Curran, on April 20th. And we actually just recently received the final supplemental engineering report this past Monday. So we will be working to submit to DDW. Along with Woodard and Curran, we have finalized our customer training materials, and we are working internally to prepare a customer notification letter that will go out to our customer retailers to notify of the upcoming fill station project. The analysis and design side, we received the 70% design drawings April 13th, and we actually just received the 100% design drawings at the end of April on April 28th. So we are working with our consultant Tetra Tech to finalize those design plans. Along with the design plans, we are working internally with our operations department to determine the best feasible potential remote fill station site. And so if you follow me to page 94, I will show you that for the rest of the May, we are working to look at those potential fill station sites, submit the supplemental engineering report next week. And we have also begun a conversation internally to discuss how the fill station will be operated and maintained. And for June, we are looking at procuring the equipment needed. And like I mentioned in previous meetings, the construction solicitation will most likely not be needed since we can procure the equipment internally via our existing vendors. And then we will also continue seeking out partnership opportunities with other agencies for the potential remote fill station site. And so in July, depending on when we receive regulatory approval, we are hoping to construct and operate the fill station. But again, that is all dependent on when we receive that approval, which could take anywhere from 2 to 3 months. We anticipate it could be faster, but that is all up to the regulatory agencies. That is my conclusion of my report, and I'm willing to.
Thank you. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Gray, do you have any questions? I have one question. So at the SC Little plant, that could be the primary site. So that would be very expensive to do what we're talking about doing. When is that? When do you think it's gonna be done? Basically, when do you think you're gonna get your permit?
What do you think we will?
Get the permit.
I can't say for BDW, Uzi might want to chime in, but that's why we're anticipating, because we're not modifying, we're not modifying anything to the irrigation system. We're hoping it's a quick approval process. I can't say how long it will take for BDW though.
We keep reminding them, but I think they're allowed to have 90 days, but we keep reminding them.
Yeah, they know it's coming, so they're working with us to make sure we get a speedy.
Who's our area engineer, district engineer?
But it depends. Now they've kind of divided if it's recycled. I know we're all recycled water, but they've sort of divided up, and the San Diego region manages a lot of that. So Dip would mostly help
He's
us
the
with that.
district engineer. Under him is Kuhn Cheng, so it's gonna be going to Kuhn. And under him is Juan Ariola, so it's to Juan, but they're all under Chief, so all of them will be.
Now under Ganache, who took over for Randy Bernard.
Well, use your power and influence there, Jesse.
I'd like to add, Chairman Alvarez, that we are having internal discussions about the staffing, hours of operation. What are the alternatives that we want to look at? We spoke recently with the Irving Ranch Water District, who had the program running for 3 years, between 2015 to 2018. They shared what they've done, how many hours of operation, how did they stagger the schedules. So we're looking at next go around to bring in some options for the board to consider on how to staff it, how much we want to spend on labor for the operation.
Okay. So with that, we're done with the information calendar. There's no closed session. Director's comments. Do you have any comments, Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Director Gray, any director's comments? And I have none. So we will move to adjourn.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you to everybody here today, staff, as well as online.
Thank you. Meeting is over.